now. Okay, it takes me a minute to go live on Facebook, so. Almost there. All right, I'll go live now, Mark. I think we're all ready to go shortly. Hang on. Okay, Mark. Well, it's 4 past. You might want to tap dance or something for 40 seconds, but and you're muted because I muted everyone. But whenever you would like to begin, we are ready.
All right. I actually just messaged to Alex. I know what's up. Well, welcome everybody to another Lit Balm show, the first of 2024. Today we are honored to have some fantastic readers with us. They include Alex Cigale, Lynn Levin, Martin Ott, Petra Kuppers, Dennis Maloney, and JT Barbarese. And we will get started on the feature shortly. But before Cassandra and I are going to read a short poem, Cassandra is an award-winning prose poet, an international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote Prose Poetry and Introduction and co-edited the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She is commissioning editor for Westerly Magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia, and is now also working on an anthology of ekphrastic work. Isn't that right, Cassandra?
That's right. Yep. So if you've got ekphrastic poems, send them along. It's actually a scholarly book, but as we're looking for examples, as we're writing chapters, we are very keen to have some great ekphrastic poetry to draw on. So I thought that I would read a summer poem. This was in a summer anthology about a year ago that we were commissioned to do, and it's called Passion Fruit. You promised to kiss me with a mouthful of passion fruit pulp, pledged to plunge your tart yellow tongue between my lips on the longest day of the year. I loiter at your kitchen bench on the summer solstice with a bowl of bisected passion fruit, their seeds glistening like tadpole spawn. You begin by sucking the flesh from the wrinkled hemispheres, your sticky fingers coming to rest on my bare leg, a tiny fingerprint arch of amber. I urge you closer, binding us in the xanthus moment. Sun high in the sky, smooth black seeds become stepping stones from your mouth to mine. I tug on the sharp tasting membrane, but part of it still lies on your tongue. You hike up my skirt. Passion play, you breathe. I would like to introduce the incredible Mark Vincennes, who is, and please join in, it's the first Lit Balm of the year. So anyone who knows this bio, even though it's slightly changed in the middle, will be able to join in, especially for the grand finale at the end of his bio. Mark Vincennes is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He's published over 30 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently The Pearl Diver of Urunmani with White Pine Press, A Splash of Pave Paint. That's hilarious. Cave Paint with Spite and Dival, a chapbook, An Alphabet of Last Rites with Travina Barber, and The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, which is just out from Lavender Ink and very beautiful. Have a look at Mark's Facebook to check out the cover. And later, we will get The Visitation, a novelette from Sir Vision. Mark is also a prolific translator and has translated from the German, Romanian, and everyone knows French is the next one. He's published 11 books of translations, most recently an Audible Blue, Selected Poems, 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist, Klaus Merz, and It won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. Pretty stunning. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He's currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincenz is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. Here we go. He's lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are more walnut caterpillar moths, wee harlequin bugs, and triangulate cobweb spiders than people. It's nice to be back in Massachusetts, vicariously living through you, Mark. Would you read something for us, please?
Of course. This one's called An Apex Predator. Cool yourself off with dragon blood, my own grandmother had said. What she meant, of course, was that your own significance might be mythical or even hypothetical. Only names and fortunes change, were the last words she ever said. The night after her passing, a very human full moon was pinned to the sky. I remember toasting her afterlife with a strange selection of other creatures. They were all gathered here in their respectful and respective numbers. How do you enter this violent paradise when actually you want to be out there seeding space? The oldest tortoise says, staring from the mirror of his own heavenly order. These are the deep concerns of humanity, says the jaguar, Raina Maria, who growls and paces. But of course, they all still live in ancient Sumerian time, says the greater horseshoe bat, collapsing his wings, then taking a long-earned nap. A fly, in her youth, saunters into the congregation and bumps into several faces. Excuse me, she says, before settling into her young buttery paces. She'll go anywhere the sweetness seizes her, says an ancient grey moth cleaning her fangs with a chamois cloth. Lord save us all, says the grey dormouse. Follow the legends deep into their sugar jowls. She crows like a bird. And then, before swooping down to grab the moth, the bat says, and what is mythology but a way of bringing significance to each and every single bite? And next we hear from the intrepid Alex Cigale. Alex is a Russian-American English language poet, translator, editor, and professor. His own poems have appeared widely in such periodicals as the Colorado Review, Green Mountains Review, North American Review, Tampa Review, and the Literary Review. His translations from the Russian can be found in Cimarron Review, Literary Imagination, and many more. From 2011 to 2013, he was assistant professor at American University of Central Asia in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. He was born in Chernovsky, Ukraine, and lived in St. Petersburg, Russia, before immigrating with his family to the United States in '75. In 2015, he was awarded an NEA Fellowship in Literary Translation for his work on the poet of the Philological School, Mikhail Eremin. His first book, Russian Absurd, Daniel Kalm's Selected Writings, came out from Northwestern University Press in 2017. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm incredibly grateful to Mark and everyone here. Yeah. I assume you can hear me. I'm incredibly grateful to you, Mark, for asking me to join you. This is an opportunity for me to try again to resume work that I had abandoned 5 years ago. And it's Mandelstam. I'll be reading you a few Mandelstam poems today. I had an essential Mandelstam, about 300 pages ready, and well, didn't get very far with getting interest in it. So I'll just go ahead and read you some Mandelstam today. And the first one is titled January 1, 1924. He didn't revise it until 1937. And then, so after that, I'll read you some of those late poems. It was published in Michigan Quarterly. I hope you'll find some of these online for yourself and read them again. Just a few words. So I do want to say that why there's a need for another Mandelstamm. The work is just so dense. The metaphorical arc, this long metaphorical arc with sentences that go on for so long is incredibly difficult. And usually they're not just mangled, but really mistranslated. So just a couple of notes for this one. Roach and pike are two very common Russian fish. An Underwood is an old brand of American typewriter. And the fourth estate is the so-called intelligentsia. January 1, 1924. He who has kissed time on its tormented temple with filial tenderness will subsequently recollect how time took to its bed in a snowbank the color of wheat beyond the window. He who has raised the centuries' inflamed eyelids, two giant apples swollen with sleep, will constantly behold the noise when time's rivers, deceptive, dumb, and deaf, began to howl. The master age, with its two sleepy apple eyes and a beautiful mouth formed of clay, and to the warming hand of this, his aging son, it, dying, will press its arid lips. I know each passing day life's exhalations weaken. A bit more time, and they will cease to sing the simple song of clay resentments and flood the lips with molten tin. O life of clay, O centuries' death throes, I am afraid only he will understand you who wears the helpless human smile of a man who has exhausted himself. How painful to search out for a lost word, to raise the feverish eyelids, and with quicklime in blood gather for an alien tribe the healing grasses that grow at night. Century, the sick sun's layer of whitewash in blood crusts over. Moscow sleeps like a wooden stall, and there is nowhere to run from the master age. The snow, as of old, smells of apples. I have an urge to dash from my doorstep, but where? It's dark out in the street, and like salt spread over the cobblestone paving, conscience in my path turns white. Along the alleyways, birdhouses, the huts' eaves, not far from here, having for once made it out, I, a common passenger, covered in sequins of fish fur, am constantly struggling to button the carriage flap. One street flashes by and then another, and the frosty sound of sledges crackles with apples. The flap's tight loop will not yield, constantly slipping out of my fingers. With what ironmonger's wares that the winter night rattles the streets of Moscow. First, it trundles with frozen fish, then with blasts of steam from the pink tea houses, like a roach flashing silver. Moscow. Moscow, it's you again. I tell it, greetings. Do not condemn me. It's quite all right now. Out of old obligations, I accept the friendship of bitter frost and the pike's judgment. Flaring up in the snow, a medicinal raspberry, and somewhere the clicking of an underwood, the coachman's back, and foot-deep snow. What else do you want? They won't lay a hand on you. They won't kill you. Winter a beauty, The Capricorn sky, dappled in scattered stars, burns bright with milk, and with horsehair against the frozen runners, all of space abrades in rubbing jingles. And the alleyways, smoked by a kerosene stove, swallowed the snow, the raspberry, and the ice. Everything sloughs off with a little Soviet sonata as the year 1920 is recalled. Could it be I'll resort to disgraceful ridicule? The frost once again gives off a whiff of apples, a wonderful pledge to the fourth estate, and a vow so huge it makes us cry. Who's left for you to kill? Whom to honor? What lies will you come up with next? The underwood's cartilage. Hurry, wrench a key out. Under it, you'll find the bone of a pike. The layer of whitewash in the blood of the sick sun will melt, and a splash of blessed laughter splatter. But the simple tunes of the chattering typewriters are but a shadow of those mighty sonatas of old. And I'll stick with some of the poems from January for this one. This one is January 10th, 1934. Mandelstam has stopped writing poetry for about 5-6 years. And this is how he resumed and found a way forward into this late period. And he begins with 6 poems dedicated to Andrei Bely, a Russian poet and novelist who passed away in January 34. So January 10, 1934. I am pursued by 2-3 incidental phrases. All day long I aver, my sadness has been fatted up. My Lord, how corpulently bloated and pale-eyed the dragonflies of death, how besmirched the azure. Where are the firstborn? Where their happy habit? Where the fledgling hawk in the depths of the soul? Where is decency, honor? Where austere effort? Where the proud stature? Where clarity of speech? Tangled and confused like the virtuoso's zigzags of the ice skater into the bluest part of the flame, its frosty fluff they wangle in their steely harness, clinking glasses with the river encased in blue ice. Clear to him are the salt's 3-storied powders and the resonant voices of German wise men and the brilliant disputes of the Russian firstborn, becoming known in a half-century or half an hour. And suddenly the music of our trap, it has been sprung, no longer as a predator from under the horsehair bows, nor for the sake of hearing or the sake of comfort, but pouring forth for pulsing temples and for muscles, pouring for the affectionate, only just removed mask, for the plaster fingers that had never held the quilt, for the engorged lips, for the fortified tenderness of the generously grained peace and goodness. The cinnabar of blood, health, and sweat was riled up. Inhaling the coat furs, huddled shoulder to shoulder, sleep inside the hull of sleep, within which the dream of advancing, if only but a half step forward. Among this throng stood the genuine engraver, stilling himself to transfer into incarnate copper that which the painter who'd only smudged the paper stingily with charcoal had barely managed to impress. It was as though I was suspended on my own eyelashes, all shooting forth with branches, ripening, fruiting, until snapping off, I'll tumble down, stirring in faces the only thing that we know in this life for sure. And it was published some time ago in the Plume newsletter. So it should still be available online. This stuff is obviously very densely elusive. Most of those allusions are to various poems and novels by Andre Bailey, who's mostly known in the West for his early modernist novel, Petersburg. And so those allusions are to that novel. I think I have time for two more. So I would like to read Ode to Stalin because it's such a controversial one, and maybe one more after that. These are some of his last works, and this one is said to have was written to have saved his life, but it was generally something he struggled over for a very long time. So here's Mandelstam's Ode to Stalin. I'd take up a piece of charcoal for this highest praise, for the joy of drawing, enduring, and immutable. I would illustrate the air, cutting it into cunning corners with equal parts apprehension and concern, so that the natural, the genuine, be reflected in these features bordering audaciously on true art. I would recount a story of one whose thought shifted the world's axis, following the custom of 140 nations. I would raise up my brow's most minor of corners and raise it up again as to display it differently. Must be Prometheus has fanned his tiny frame. Gaze upon me, Achilles, how capably now I play, I paint. I would appropriate an arsenal of thundering lines for his millennium grows ever more youthful, and harness courage together with a smile, unleashing it in a world liberated. And in the council of wise eyes for my brother, no matter whom he be, find an expression to use, drawing nearer to which, to him, you suddenly recognize the Father, and losing your breath, sense the world's immediacy. And I would sing my praise and thank the ragged hills that saw it fit to nurture these bones, this skeleton and this wrist. A child of the mountains, he had tasted of the bitter prison. I call him out now by name, Jugashvili, not Stalin. O artist, guard and preserve the warrior brave. Surround him to crown with the coniferous forest of your fluid attention. Don't disappoint the Father with a dreadful picture or an inadequate thought. Painter, assist him, who is in spirit with us all, who guides our senses and constructs, who edifies. Neither my nor any other people are his nearest kin. People, our Homer, will threefold magnify his lauds. People, our Homer, will threefold magnify his lauds. O artist, guard and preserve the warrior brave. Humanity's forests sing after him, becoming denser, and the future itself, the philosopher's fellowship, attends him all the time more closely and unafraid. He is suspended from the tribune as from a peak into the mounds of heads. Debtor stronger than any claim, his mighty eyes of uncompromising kindness, his massive brow this moment enlightens someone. And I would point attention with an index arrow. And I would point attention with an index arrow to the certainty with which his mouth is set, father of obstinate speeches, his sculpted complex eyelid, hard-edged. Know this, cease from a million frames. He is sincerity entire, he is the copper's acclaim, eagle-like hearing that will brook no dampening, for us all, fully prepared to live our lives and die, his deep and playful wrinkles run into a frown. Clutching the charcoal in which all is confirmed, in greedy hand, but one affinity with battle cry, carnivorous hand, only to glimpse the axis of likeness, I will crumble the coal in search of his likeness. He is my teacher, and I a student of his. I learn from him to know no mercy for myself. Misfortunes will conceal part of the greater plan. I'll track it down in chance encounter with its child. It may well be that I am unworthy yet of friends. Perhaps I'm not suffused enough with tears and bile. I see him all the time in military coat and peaked hat. On that remarkable square, eyes aflame in gladness, his eyes. By Stalin's gaze, mountains are moved, and the valley squints into the distance of flatness. Like the unwrinkled surface of the sea, like yesterday into tomorrow, the plowshare giants rose recede into the sun. He smiles the smile of a reaper of grain in conversation, a handshake that has begun to last without end in the sixfold vowed expanse of space. And every haystack, threshing floor, barn, thatched roof is strong, smart, tightly knit, all that is alive, good, the nation's miracle. Life lived large will be grand writ. The crucial pivot of happiness turns over and revs, and I preserve it sixfold in my consciousness. A patient witness to work, struggle, and the reaping his immeasurable way across the taiga's dense plains and Lenin's October until the sacred oath is fulfilled. Along a row of human heads recede the hills. I shrink with them, will no longer be mentioned, but in sweet books and in children's games, I will rise up again to tell all the sun shines on. There is no truer truth than this, the earnestness of a fighter. For honor and love, for valor and for steel, there is a glorious name on the reader's clenched lips. Blessed to have heard him and shared our lives with his. I think I have to stop there. I don't think there's more time.
Thank you, Alex.
I apologize for running over.
No problem, no problem. Next, we hear from Lynn Levin, who has been called one of the most poignantly witty voices of our time. She's a Southampton resident, poet, writer, longtime professor of English at Drexel University, and was for many years a lecturer in creative writing at the University of Pennsylvania. She's the author of 5 poetry collections. She debuted, though, as a short story writer with her most recent book, House Parties, out from Spite and Idle, named one of the best books of summer by Philadelphia Magazine. The Massachusetts Review calls the stories amusing, startling, poignant, and heartwarming. Right now, Philly says House Parties is a triumph of compassion, potent perfection, and unforgettable stories. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say, Alex, those translations were amazing. I only read him in translation, and I didn't know that the previous ones were mangled, but that ode to Stalin, and then he gets thrown in a camp. Oh. All right, this is on a totally different note. This is social satire. It's called Tell Us About Your Experience. Jim Gulliford, wearing a white shirt and a slightly frayed blue tie, signed onto his computer at Union Analytics. As usual, surveys swarmed his inbox, all due ASAP. A Qualtrics about yesterday's meeting, a doodle poll about the next meeting, a performance review for the new intern, an obligatory eval of an outside vendor with 24 questions. This one even demanded that everyone rate the layout of the report, the background colors, the size and font of the type. Every time Gulliford hit save, the vendor survey crashed, forcing him to start all over again. 36 and single, Jim had the face of a man seen from a distance, the face of a man in a crowd. Bartenders overlooked him. When raising his hand at meetings, he was ignored. On the plus side, he blended in. Panhandlers left him alone, and he could tailgate after others at keycard access doors. One of several data entry techs at Union, Gulliford spent his days in his cubicle, hands to keyboard, nose to screen, pumping numbers to analysts who sat at nicer desks on better chairs and earned enough to buy themselves condos. With all the busy work and make work of surveys, when did the company expect him to do his job, which this week was logging in data about the sales of men's socks? No-show socks, athletic socks, mid-calf socks, and over-the-calf socks, with notably few sales for the over-the-calf kind. Then on to sock materials, then the styles, solids, bold, solids, stripes, argyles, novelty patterns, and such. Really quite a lot to men's socks. He glanced down at his own socks, which were gathering under his ankles on the way to bunching under his heels. These days, you couldn't buy a bottle of booze or ask to have your modem reset without some wheedling robot pecking at you for praise. Tell us about your experience. Take a few minutes to help us serve you better. Rate your satisfaction. Write a review. How are we doing? And forget anonymous. Once Gulliford gave his banker an unsatisfactory review, and the next day the guy phoned to guilt him for costing him a bonus. This very morning, his cell phone lit up with a text message, but it wasn't from the woman he'd met at singles volleyball meetup. It was Frank's service center, wanting to know how he felt about the repair they'd done on his vacuum cleaner. He respected, or maybe feared, the imperative in the interrogative, and he had an odd sense that the survey powers, like street cameras, were watching him. Therefore, he followed orders. Also, he liked to be helpful. There was that. Still, as he did his duty and filled out the surveys, he sometimes hated himself for wasting his time, his intellect, his freedom. The hushed music of the office, soft clicks of typing, and the fragments of muffled conversation kept up its steady cadence. Barging into this came growls from Jim's stomach. No time to fix his breakfast today. Answering the vacuum cleaner survey sucked up all his time. He had to dash into a Quick Mart next to the office to pick up breakfast. As he toiled at the morning's surveys, sometimes 10 meant worse, sometimes 10 meant best, his Danish sweated in its cellophane, and his coffee, which was end of the pot sludge to begin with, cooled to tar. Starving, his concentration interrupted by his gurgling gut, Gulliford plugged away at the latest time-sensitive survey, hoping eventually to get around to the Danish and the hosiery project. He glanced lovingly at the framed photo of Amber, his cat. She shed quite a bit, so the vacuum repair meant a lot to him. As he selected the radio buttons, typed in his comments, and advanced through the screens, Jim's brain wandered to the more pleasant subject of socks. He wondered if the client, the American Consortium of Hosiery Informatics, had annual conventions where everyone showed off their socks. Did the companies have parties, and did they call them sock hops? Did they have holiday celebrations with contests for the best decorated Christmas stockings? And did they have a podiatrist on retainer? An email alert chimed. The deadline for the socks data was 3:30 p.m., which he very well knew, and he suspected that he might have to skip lunch in order to finish his project. He hadn't even had time to try the unappetizing Danish. Was it to be a day of fasting? A person could waste away. After finishing the first several surveys, some imp inside Gulliford made him close the outside vendor survey, it was his third go, and delete the email that sent it. What a jolt he got, hitting that delete key. He felt himself launched into a foreign space, exciting, scary, and free. Would management notice his rebellion? Would they even care? He thought about the watchful survey powers, then glanced at Amber, who gave him a supportive look. Jim felt self-conscious about his sagging socks. He bent down to hike them up, frayed tie dangling. Wham! The dipping motion upset the mechanism of his chair. The seat plunged. Something under the chair snatched the end of his tie and snagged him in a stranglehold. Struggling for air, unable to speak, Jim gagged out, "Arg," and then a tracheal, He smacked his desk and choked out a few muffled cries. With his waning strength, he again smacked the top of his desk. "All good?" chirped Laura, the admin from the other side of the partition. What's all the racket? No, he wasn't all good. He was all bad, all dying. He tried the tracheal sound again. Life force ebbing, he clutched his tie and tipped himself all the way over so as to crash to the floor and make more noise. He lay on his side, struggling for air, trying to scooch closer to the chair to give his neck some slack. His noose some slack. Good God, shrieked Laura, who came running with scissors and saved his life by cutting his tie in half. Jim rolled over, gasping, the amputated neckwear lolling like a blue tongue in the chair works. His co-workers gathered around as he tried to catch his breath. Jeff from IT unbuttoned Gulliford's shirt collar, unknotted his tie, and chucked the garrote into the trash. Jim didn't want to cry, but he felt like crying. Still gasping and hoarse from the trauma, he coughed his heartfelt thanks to Laura and Jeff. Now there were two people who deserved great evals. He was amazed that Laura, whom he took for a dimwit, came running with scissors, which in this case was a totally genius thing to do. How life did surprise. Imagine dying in the office strangled by your tie. So different from wasting away in a cheap nursing home, as he expected to do. Gulliford managed to stagger away from the chair, which he thought might snap at him again. Then he looked down at his troublemaking socks. What was that old saying, for the want of a horseshoe nail? He realized as never before the importance of quality men's hosiery. Jeff helped into a spare chair, a traditional one, without mechanics. Someone brought over a cup of water. Presently, Bronwyn from HR came by. She had dark red nail polish with a white flourish on one of her nails. Jim hated her. She gazed at him with a prosecutor's eye, not a shred of sympathy or human kindness in her. She posed most of her questions in the negative. He wasn't injured, was he? He didn't need to go to the hospital, did he? He could tell that she wanted to dodge a workers' comp claim or trouble with OSHA. He doubted that she would ask operations to buy a new chair or talk to legal about suing the chair company or do whatever companies did when a guy nearly got killed by a piece of office furniture. She called someone to help Gulliford find a new cubicle. The chair lay on the floor like a somnolent bull. Gulliford rubbed his sore neck. It was now noon. His near brush with death had swept away his appetite. He wished to return to the zen of inputting sock data. Then came a new round of surveys, a dragnet of them chasing him down. Rate your experience with HR. Share your opinion of the hands-free swivel chair. Tell us about your incident. Teamwork and you. Just a few questions. Delete, delete, delete. Trashing the surveys didn't give him the buzz he got before. Now when he hit the key, it was like a counterpunch. 3:30 rolled around, his project nowhere near complete. An email came in reminding him of the deadline. A hunger headache and a woozy feeling, low blood sugar, he supposed, made it harder to concentrate, but he forged ahead with the socks project and left the office at 6:50 p.m. with still more work to do on the socks. Dragging himself from the bus to his apartment, he greeted Amber, freshened up her food, and trembling from hunger, opened a can of tuna for himself. The next day at work, the same incident questionnaires cluttered his inbox, this time with high importance tacked onto their subject lines. Again, he deleted each one. Whether this was passive resistance or passive aggression or the stubbornness of the imp, he didn't know, but he didn't love his rebellion as much as he did before. He didn't want to lose his job. He only wanted to do his job. He worked through lunch, inputting the socks data, his stomach gurgling. Once more, his job was starving him. Bronwyn materialized before him, gesturing with her flourished fingernail to his computer screen. Jim, there seems to be some miscommunication. Yesterday, I sent you a number of questionnaires regarding your mishap, and today I resent them with high importance. You must complete them. I declined, said Jim, his stomach growling. Bronwyn looked at him as if he came from outer space. She began again. You understand, Jim, that this is normal business practice. When you receive emails from management, you must respond to them. I decline to answer the surveys, Jim replied with a blank look. He reached down to hitch up his socks, another recalcitrant pair. I have work to do. What I'm trying to tell you, she said in a severe voice, is that you are obliged, that means you are required, to respond to the surveys. I decline, he said. Bronwyn's eyes grew so wide that he could see the whites all around. And then it continues with his rebellion. A la Bartleby a little bit. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lynn. And next we hear from Martin Ott, who's a longtime LA resident, veteran and father, and the author of 11 books of fiction and poetry, 2 of which won the De Novo and Sandine prizes. Martin's work has appeared in more than 300 magazines and 20 anthologies. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to hear the readers today and to engage in the Lit Balm community. Thanks so much. I decided from hearing some work today that I'm going to call a little bit of an audible. I was originally thinking I would read from my new book of fiction, a novel, Shadow Dance, that came out from Regal House, which is about a soldier coming back from the Afghanistan war, chased by shadows of all sorts. But I'm actually going to read a few poems that covers the same ground. I've been a little bit inspired by some of the things I've been hearing. So first poem I'm going to read today is called Survivor's Manual to Love and War. Death is a loving dog with no children or chew toys to occupy its attention. It will lick you into submission, this inevitable pack instinct to join the vast departed. The standard autopsy needle, which has a straight shank but a slightly curved tip, is good for survival sewing. Love is a dying battery in your favorite appliance you can't live without. It is impossible to conserve this indeterminable reservoir, your capacity to burn through. Don't throw any clothes away. Pull up your socks, close your collar, be prepared to jump overboard, avoid attracting or annoying sharks. Desire is a prisoner's final meal with access to the greatest chefs, cooking for furlough in adjacent cells. You are at its delicious mercy in a buffet, bubble, or bunker, waiting to sit to find the price. Place your traps where the trail is narrow, use entrails as bait and the skin as a sled to drag the meat. Home is on your back. Belief is the best dressed bully, unwilling to let you cross a chasm in those comfortable clothes. There is little hope of moving past the cul-de-sacs and suits, the curvy hips and winding way. Conserve sweat by soaking clothes in the sea. Desert trails resemble interlacing cow paths. Sleep out the storm with your back to the wind. Survival is a submerged, mossy beast, hungrier than any living thing, a mass that roils the earth in mounds. You cannot see the holes and hills beyond the horizon, the tilled fields, the uneven terrain you'll need to surf. Take care of the injured, provide temporary shelter, stay at the scene of the crash unless you see land. Try to establish contact with rescuers. It will lick you into submission. It is impossible to conserve. You are at its delicious mercy. There is little hope of moving. You cannot see the holes and hills. Do not get separated from your party. That poem is from a book, Under Days, and I was using threading a lot back then in poetry, and I found when I left the military, I had way too many weird manuals, and I took some from a survival manual behind enemy lines and threaded it with my own voice in that. You know, we just talked about Los Angeles. This kind of just sprung to mind. I'm going to read a poem, Why I Don't Carry an Umbrella. 10 days of rain a year in Los Angeles invokes the legend of sheathed umbrellas. My mother once told me a story about a boy who lost an eye on an umbrella's undercarriage. Mary Poppins has proven that you can get swept away by unbridled passion. Is an umbrella actually an umbrella? My umbrella stands is the perfect size for playing sock basketball. I once dreamt I was an umbrella in a giant's hand used as a torture device for wayward Englishmen. Is wetness the existence of love? Wile E. Coyote taught me that an umbrella cannot block rain in the form of a piano. An umbrella stays closed on its hook when the sun's astray and you fear that it is the unanswerable you. Mold spreads in the folds. Can the fabric hold dark matter? Desire cannot be stopped. I slept with an umbrella along my leg after my dog ran away. The sun fears its own shadow in the shape of an umbrella. What else are folded newspapers good for? Because I've never seen the umbrella yet that could lick its own eyebrows. An umbrella is a flower. It opens, it is dying. Is to be dry a form of disobedience? A single umbrella cannot protect my children. Freedom is a closed umbrella in the perils of love. Yep, a couple of loose poems shook out of this book, and I think I'm going to read one or maybe two. We'll see how time goes. The first is a ghazal. I think it's in my book, Lessons of Camouflage. It's called Why My Father Carries 3 Guns. Who will be my brother in a family of guns? The virtuoso performance is the one not given in a symphony of guns. Nothing creates more holes than earthworms. We become rigor mortis in sandstone, skin casing, necrobiology of guns. If a gun goes off in the forest and no one hears, Gandalf teeters on a geoglyph with a thunder stick, the shamanism of guns. Paralysis is permanent, investments are hidden. In holy places, the myth of flooding is the flooding of guns. String theory places the bullet in a state of perpetual being. Our schools teach us the tragic trigonometry of guns. And I think I'm going to read one more, which is from my prose poem collection, Sharks versus Selfies, which is coming out from Black Spring Press Group in the UK in 25. It's a poem called The Prison in the Middle of Nowhere. The prison in the middle of nowhere was built in the village but never opened, debated in public but never funded, lost in the mismanagement of government fiefdoms, placed beneath the water tower emblazoned with the faded name of the town founder, a symbol of expansion and contraction, swift punishment and purgatory, unswift justice and the eternal now. Nearly bankrupt the village that plunged it into water and power, rumored to spawn watermelons in the sandy exercise yard so sweet that dictators flew drones to collect them. Was supposed to hold the prisoners in limbo from desert wars, but the wars never ended. Held a retired cosmonaut who snuck inside solitary confinement for a time, the loneliness of the world viewed from afar and held within. Inspired lovers to scale the turret and light candles for the flickering of fear, provided a canvas to children who etched their dreams on walls that would eventually tumble. I think that's it. Appreciate it, everyone.
Thank you, Martin. Now we hear from Petra Kuppers, or Kuppers, who is a disability culture activist and a community performance artist. Petra's fourth poetry collection, Diver Beneath the Street, investigates true crime and eco-poetry at the level of the soil. It's forthcoming from Wayne State University Press this February. Petra teaches at the University of Michigan and is a 2023 Guggenheim Fellow. Welcome, Petra.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. Right. So I'm first of all, so many thanks for Karen Neuberg, who's here, who turned me onto this reading series. So I'm really delighted to be here. And thanks, everybody, for having me and being part of this reading. So I'm actually holding my book already in my hands because it comes out in February, but I just got my book box. So here's the beautiful book. Yay. So glad to have it here. Yay. I'm going to read from the screen, though, because it always works better. So it is a true crime book, and it involves murders here where I live in Ypsilanti, Michigan, the famous Michigan murders, 1968, 67 to 69, as well as the Detroit serial killer that murdered women here in 2019. So I'm going to read you a poem that metabolizes some of this this work. It's eco-poetry, so it's very much about where we are, the soil, the place. Enjoy. Dancing princesses. An unknown number of princesses vanish at night. They go down a trapdoor in their bedrooms, sisters all. The hole in the ground leads to a winding path. The path enters a silver forest, then a golden forest, then a forest of diamonds. The detective who follows them in an invisibility cloak breaks a bough. The trees scream. The unknown number of princesses arrive at a lake. An unknown number of princes and princesses await them with boats. They hitch a ride, and the invisible detective jumps in with the youngest princess. Her swain complains that the boat is heavier than normal. The princess says, "It's the heat. We are all getting tired." The company arrives at a castle. They dance the night away. At 3 a.m., the shoes of an unknown number of princesses are worn through, in tatters, with holes, decayed and fragile. They all, including the invisible detective, run home, up the staircase, through the trapdoor, across the creaky floorboards, and are found asleep the next morning. There were two brothers by the name of Grimm. They collected this tale, a story brought to them. Sometimes unnamed women garnered the stories, detectives at the hearth, informants. Ethnographic practices in the German countryside, fantasy police procedural. To warn of the dire wolf, to not go out at night, to see your true love in a lying mirror, to dance in burning coals. Wesens live all around you right now. In the Grimm story, the detective is an old, tired soldier out to gain a wife and a kingdom if he finds the answer to the vanishing women and their danced-out shoes. There are few answers, and only a handful that would stand up in court. In this story, numbers are not endless. Numbers huge and obscured. Detectives hurt others in their hunt. Trees scream with a train whistle. This poem could be printed on a piece of old t-shirt, worn and velvet from washing and from the rain. Maybe a mouse pilfers threads for its nest. A swallow shits on it, coming home into the barn's high beams after hunting and eating a thick, furry moth. Women vanish, are accused of going dancing. Kings and queens alert them to danger and seek to imprison them with heavy door locks and golden keys. The danger comes from the soldiers out there. Good citizens blend in to fool. The youngest princess, not 14 years old, climbs into her ride. A boat of a car, fins slice the air, traverse the moat. The princess, so dark, so fair. In the night, sleep in the golden bow. Sleep in the abandoned lot. Diamond eyelids blink cat's eyes for the club. Lies to the mother, here lies the rub. The candyman brings the dope. The rope swings in the barn. The neighbors spin the yarn. Rumpelstiltskin should be recognizable, that's all they ask for, like a hunchback in an identikit. Clouds vanish in the clear-cut lantern jaw, the maw of suburbia. All right, that was the first one. And the second one brings us even closer to my neighborhood here. So during the pandemic lockdown, I spent a lot of time wheeling around this neighborhood. I use a wheelchair and I walk with a cane. And I was tracking this neighborhood, which is the location of many of these murders. And I wrote in relation to sight. So you're hearing a lot about what goes on in the world below our feet. Reintegration. And there's an epigraph. She has difficulty writing, even imagining that girl's body, her life, what she might have been feeling, writes Donna de la Paillere, work of love and terror. Beetle transports human hair to its burrow. It's down, she's down. Hair nests deep beneath earth. Long black hairs, loosened, wound around adhesive footpads, pulvily. Welcome to a new home of soil-based grease. Lawn care feelings echo the earth's rotation. Sunshine warms the entry hole till it glows. Deep beetles seize the round ahead, a gloriole, a halo. Beetle saints dip tiny bits of hair, tow-headed child's clippings, become plush fillings for larvae featherbeds. Grass verge feels the trap between the cambium's pure water. Tree feels effluvia flow in progress, suck. Black paint dappled onto green leaf feelings, rosy glow. Road divider, wild plant feelings, grass kneels down. Tree umbrellas with the widest arms reach to neighbor, shade and scorch releases fluids, cadaverine particles soak into clay, bind with kaolin that bakes into whiteness. Grass feels pressure when a line of policemen tramp. Tree falls after the arson fire, jumps over the barn into its arms. Grass feels the impact this time, heavy. It booms. This is no casual throw, no careful positioning. This hurts. Mud churns milk-like from earth and rain. Shoe ballet mashes wine grapes, chlorophyll juices squelch into a broth. Sparrow jumps into shoe print. Worms sing round O's. Dark world pecks them into twos. Each survives, thrives, deeply tucked into narrow tunnels of clay, cool earth. Touch the worm's hind part. Galvanized taste buds signal the feast. Blowflies land in aromatic clouds. Tastes of salt leach far. Ring crystals spread a root bale. Bloat and release. The bubble sinks to the sigh of leaves. Shift phosphorus bioavailability. Change graphs. Use asphalt to neutralize the last nitrogen. Fix it into soil. Find the ancient photograph. Tender skins baked deep before spring rain can wash it into the river. Feed algae bloom, a blossom to honor the dead. Thank you. All right, and I'm going to go for a slightly later poem. Okay. Viral crime. So the other story of the collection is the lockdown. It's the COVID lockdown. It's our penetrability to what is out there, our penetrability to the environment, viruses, openings, leachings, much of what you've heard already, now mixing that with the vulnerability of home. Viral crime. When you really want an ice cream sundae, green peeper swamp, fungi poof smell. Slouched in, roof caved in, raked through the mud, lampshade baked into orange flocked wallpaper. Disinfect the mail, cover your relations. Emotions are produced in the body as sensation interpreted by the brain. Don't inhale too much. Make sure the sanitizer rain has time to kill any bacteria that might have been introduced during the mixing process. Blunt force trauma. Yogurt, banana, sunshine. True crime rendered. On the swing set, a brooch partakes of the nature of both speech and song. Worm eats in the tender armpit, leg, fascia, stretch. Alphabetize your books today. Use the nip sleeve to rub away dust. Sneeze sinus, find action of cutting off a person's or animal's limbs. A recommended sewing pattern, along with retch until the rib cage dislocates. Suggested carpet materials. Look down at the soil. Can never ever be found. Look down at the soil. All right, I'm going to read one that is specific to a particular location. So this was written after visiting Coventry Street, Detroit, which was the site of one of the 2019 killings. The epigraph for this poem reads, "The black mold fungus Strachybotrytis shatarum was originally discovered on the wall of a house in Prague in 1837. The average person inhales at least 40 conidia fungus spores per hour." Coventry Street, Detroit. Action. I zoom into the vulnerable opening, quiver shot. Curb is a bump, tender green clad, a carpet thick, dry patches, razor burn. Over the occluded lines of sidewalk, gray engraving into riotous weeds. Sun shines on my back, birdsong in the city, world smells open, rain fresh, steaming. My lens finds the first stoop. Cut. Pan to the banister, peels, skin flakes, dry, long strips, old paint emulsified, durable metal. Lead resists moisture for a time, now fragment. Fly, get away, fly with the wind, disseminate, go. Action. Sneakered foot crashes through splintery wood. Rebalance. A teenager's locks billow into my viewfinder. Crash's echo finds birdwing beat, beat inside, crawl, clamor. Cut. A heavy lock, red rusty closed hasp, over medium density plywood, door shaped, window shaped, anchored against release. Action. A mold spore wings through the crack between the crumbly window frame and new board, angled at a cocky tilt into the wind. Cellulose sated, the fungus spore twirls, scents, drifts toward damp, the open slips with heaving sigh down toward inner tree. Branches welcome to tiny endpoints, round apples wet and shaken with oxygen's embrace. It binds itself to the wall, a painting, memory of a home, nods on its growing stalk. Cut. Camera on the back of teenager on the move. Laughter peals in my ears, race to next delivery station. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Do you pronounce it Kuppers or Kuppers?
Either one is fine. It's a reclaimed word. Doesn't really exist, the umlauts. I lost the umlauts, so now no one knows how to pronounce it.
Ah, so it should be
Just fine.
Kuppers. Then.
Kuppers, all good.
Next, we hear from Dennis Maloney, who is a poet and translator and publisher and editor. A number of volumes of his own poetry have been published, including The Map Is Not the Territory, Just Enough, and listening to Tao Yuan Ming. A bilingual German-English volume, Empty Cup, was published in Germany in 2017, and in 2021, a chapbook, Some Windows, with translations in several languages, appeared in Germany from Rot Verlag. Recent collections include The Things I Notice Now, The Faces of Guan Yin, and Windows. Dennis is also editor and publisher of the widely respected White Pine Press in Buffalo, New York. Welcome, Dennis.
There we go, unmute.
Uh,
Thank you for the invite to read and be reading from Windows, which is Mark's most recent, or my most recent book from Mark's Press, which I thank you for publishing. These are all shorter poems, so I'll read a selection from they're all untitled. It begins with an epigraph by Rainer Marie Rilke from his French poems. Windows, are you not our geometry, whose simple shape circumscribes effortlessly this enormous life? The glass pane of the window serves to frame the view within and without, a transparent gate through which light passes and at the same time a mirror, reflecting life on the street, smudged and streaked with rain. This book is a window looking out on a shifting landscape. Lao Tzu said, windows and doors are carved for a house, but it is the spaces that make it work. A house can hold things because it is empty. Doors are the mouths and the nose, windows the eyes and ears. Existence makes something useful, but non-existence makes it work. In the shadow of golden arches, a band of Hopi dance their social dances to preserve culture and pass them on to the young. At home, the dancers enter the kiva through the smoke hole where they dance the sacred dance that keeps the planet in motion. Hungary, 1964. It could be Poland, Germany before the war, China, or any number of other train stations. Faces full of sadness and tears. Through the open train windows, those departing wave goodbye for a last time. The faces of those left behind reflected in the glass of the windows. The window is a refuge between the inner and outer worlds. Subtle changes occur within these fixed frames. We want our words to be a conversation with another that goes through the heart, touching and moving one. To live with this book of time when we confront old fears, sometimes we hear a voice that caresses us in surprise. On Hiroshiga's road from Edo to Kyoto, travelers, always travelers, some on foot, some on horseback, monks, merchants, samurai, trudging through the snowy mountain passes, or fighting a downpour in their rain capes and hats on the slick village streets, longing for a warm inn, a spectacular mountain, a moon in the distance, capturing the effects of weather, season, and light, these pictures of the floating world. This one from a monastery in Bulgaria, carved out of stone. 12th century monks carved cells in a chapel out of solid rock in an attempt to escape the vanity of the world and find a closer union with their idea of God. An anonymous painter created scenes of the saints on the walls and one of the king and queen, gifting the chapel to them. The delight when monks first met their morning light, each in his own heart, listening to the silence. The bees savor spring wildflowers, the persistent voice of a cuckoo in the distance. This is from the country of Ljubljana, or country of Slovenia, where I've been a couple of times, and references a couple of Slovenian poets who we published, but were also good friends of mine, Tomáš Salomon and Lešta Beljak. This is in the capital of Ljubljana. By the triple bridge in Ljubljana, next to the squares where statues are not of kings and war heroes, but of poets and architects, stands the grandfather, Perseron, who saved a language battered by history from empires of the day. Stepping into the twilight, I feel the presence of old friends and poets, Solomon and Beljak, their ghost drifting home, quiet as the evening. Linger with me just a bit longer. This is blues. His grandmother nicknamed him Muddy, as he liked to play in the mud. His plantation playmates added waters. The son of a sharecropper, he had no desire to spend life in the fields. Transitioned from the acoustic Mississippi Delta blues to the electric of Chicago. The Rolling Stones introduced us to his music, and he went from playing juke joints to stadiums. The front page of the New York Times, May 1, 1983, announced that choreographer George Balanchine had died, and on page 44, Muddy Waters obit. Forever the backdoor man, he kept his mojo working. Damn right, he's got the blues. This morning, I mistook the sky for an ocean in the windshield of a surrealistic vision of blues and aquamarine streaming in aqueous vision framed by a shore of shadowy dark clouds, snow articulating their folds and wrinkles. I am back on the interstate driving west from Cheyenne, Wyoming. This one is for one of my main teachers, the poet Robert Bly, who I became a poet because I heard him read when I was a freshman in college, taking a freshman comp course. And this is 1970, and our teacher said, go see the anti-war poet for extra credit, write a report. So I did, in 50 years on, changed my life in many ways, became a poet, publisher, and translator because of him. And was grateful to be able to publish a number of his books over the years. Driving country roads, the first flurries of November dance along the pavement. A late night message from a friend tells me, you have faded from the fog of these last few years, slipping quietly into whatever is next. Robert, you speculated about much, infuriating and bewildering some, but inspiring and enchanting many. Hearing a poem by Yeats in high school, you decided to write poetry for the rest of your life. You asked if you had wasted your life sitting indoors writing poems and said, no, I would do it again 1,000 times. Robert, I heard your poems in the translations of Machado in college like you heard Yeats. Those poems made me follow the path of poetry nurtured by those words, and yes, I too would do it again 1,000 times. And I'll finish with a couple poems from written in Big Sur, California, where we lived for about 10 years on part of the year. At certain times of the year, the membrane between the worlds grows thin, almost transparent, an increasingly porous boundary between here and the world of spirit. We may find a portal in certain places where there is a door other than the familiar one into the world we know, a doorway carved from rock, shining sunlight shining through. And where we lived about 7 years ago, fire is constant in Big Sur and in most of California. The fire season used to last 6 months and now runs 12 months, but we had a fire in a canyon which took out over 50 houses and came as close as melting the water tanks of our next door neighbor, or closest neighbor. 6 months after the fire's flames left the slopes bare came record winter rain. Some days howling rain drove sideways, horizontal, soaking the loose granite soil on the steep slopes. The roaring stream before us swelled to 3 times its size, undermining 3 large redwoods, one of which fell into the power pole, the glass transformer sending a shower of sparks into the night, cutting our power. Slopes slid and dirt roads turned into rivers with waterfalls. The night the canyon turned liquid. And I'll finish with this poem, which is being out on the sea, looking over it at night in hot tubs at Esalen, which is a spirit place of sorts. The sea at night is boisterous, then almost silent. A half a dozen random hearts, human hearts, gradually beat in unison in the slow, steady rhythm, immersed in a hot pool on the ragged edge of the continent. A blanket of fog suddenly dissipates, revealing the star book of the sky. We look to those constellations we know, the Big and Little Dipper, Orion's Belt, and wonder about those like Cassiopeia that we only know by name. The beauty in this darkness is how it lets you dissolve into the night. Thank you.
Dissolve into the night. Thank you, Dennis. And we now hear from JT Barbarese, or Joe Barbarese, who's the author of 8 books. His latest is After Prévert, selections from the French of Jacques Prévert. His work has appeared in the Atlantic Monthly, Poetry, the New Yorker, the Times of London, and essays and reviews in a range of venues, including Georgia Review, Three Penny Poetry, and many more. Welcome, JT.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. I want to start with a poem from my last book, After Prévert, which is from Hat Press. I'm not a professional translator. These are my versions of these poems. This is Pater Noster. You may know this poem if you ever watched The Sopranos, because in the 5th season, Meadow Soprano reads this poem, recites this poem to her father, Pater Noster. Our Father that art in heaven, stay there. We're doing just fine. Earth is not such a bad place. Compared, I mean, to the 8 million stories in the naked city, or the beauties of Paris. Who needs the Trinity? Next to the Suez Canal, or the Great Wall, the Nile or the Amazon, Godiva chocolates, or El Nino or the Pacific Ocean. So much to see, to know, to learn. About plain old low-down earth, so many surprises scattered all over. Amazed by our amazement, we may be too reluctant to say so, like the young socialist, too modest to walk around naked. And even granting the world's shocking evils and granting the legions and habitués of horror. And I'll take the habitués and the sons of habitués who feed on terror, the torturers, the Poles and the Pol Pots, the Mussolinis, the Stalins, the Netanyahus, bullies, quislings, punks, reality show creeps, and those poor, pretty young things who hang out with old farts, whose misery is the soured distillate of a billion blowhards. This guy is nearly untranslatable, but the thing that separates him from most, especially American poets who might have been his contemporaries at the time in the 40s, is that he writes about politics and taught me something. I want to read another translation, actually. Danny Lawless published this recently. It's called Windows, and it's by Baudelaire. Les Fenêtres, talk about untranslatable. You never see as much in an open window as you will looking at it when it's closed. There's little more profound, strange, fertile, shadowy, or wilder than a window lit from the inside. What you see in the open sunshine is always less interesting than what goes on in a simple pane of glass. In such hollow spaces, black or bright, life goes on, dreamy and suffering. Across this tide of rooftops right now, I'm looking at a woman, middle-aged, prematurely wrinkled and poor, bent over something or other, and housebound. With just her face, her dress, her posture, with practically nothing at all, I can recreate this woman's whole history, or better, her legend. From time to time, I repeat it to myself, and I fill with tears. Had she been a poor old man, I'd have manufactured him, made him up just as easily. In this way, I go to sleep, fortified by how much living and suffering I can carry on in others instead of myself. If you ask me, how can you be sure such a legend is true? All I can say is, what's the difference? Who cares what truly exists outside the self, only so long as, whatever it is, it helps me to live and know who I am and know that I am. That's a prose poem. It occurred to me it might be an appropriate thing to read tonight, since there's several prose poets out there. And I guess it was Apollinaire who more or less invented the prose poem. I'm going to read a couple of poems now from a group of poems I've been working on, tentatively titled Against Memoir. I guess this is appropriate, moving from Windows and from Baudelaire, the champion of the subjective, to this group of poems. Most of these have to do, they're not lyrical in the sense in which we normally think of the lyrical. This is called Snow. On a visit Sunday to the mass grave, an arm protruded from a layer of dirt as if in mid-wave. In a white van, 30 more dead, 13 men whose hands had been tied, shot at close range in the head. Leading west out of town, a man lay facing the sky, a green bicycle toppled beside him. Shot through the eye, the bullet bored through the back of his skull. In a clearing, in a pine forest on the edge of the village, the cops had pulled the body of a Russian boy, face flame erased from the turret of his tank. His documents showed he was just 22. By late afternoon, the abandoned tanks were dusted by snow, the soldier's body still unrecovered, like many others. Mid-road, an elderly couple stood still, held hands, steadied each other, and watched the snow fall. This is to Thomas More, M-O-R-E, as in St. Thomas More. Many of these poems are, I guess they're formalist, and it's in escaping form as far as I'm concerned. I went to Mass at your namesake church in South Philadelphia. In high school, I saw the biopic with transcendent Vanessa as the beautifully doomed Anne Boleyn, and you played by Schofield as the guileless churchman and saint. You were that miracle, an honest lawyer, and the author of our summer reading before my sophomore year. And I believed the whole thing. Smoothest of propagandists, working for Henry, you burned your share of heretics and stoked the rotisserie for Tewksbury and Bayfield, burned worthily and well. Their capital infraction, they translated the Bible. Lord Chancellor, maybe it's true you died for your faith, but you nearly make me admire that swine, Henry VIII. This is really hard to do when you actually can't be in front of living folks, as you all know. This is called On Dealey Plaza. I guess everyone knows Dealey Plaza is the spot in Dallas, Texas. 60 years ago, last 22 November, Kennedy was killed. On Dealey Plaza, the depository lays its blocky shadow across the plaza in the same noon sun. The triple underpass seems just the same. The scene looks smaller than it all did once. On a black and white TV, the cockeyed logo of As the World Turns, frozen and then erased as two gray heads from CBS broke in. Then the numbing news, and then the sequel. The adults sobbing in doorways, the empty classrooms and the quieted halls, the creepy silence on the number 2 and the packed L, the old heads buried in their Philadelphia bulletin. Want the human truth? A painted X at an otherwise ordinary traffic turn marks the spot where he thought his last live thought. Tourists with their iPhones stop, reflect, take selfies standing by the small kill zone, hit the vendor for a dog and a Coke, and then head home. Columbus's ships, so big in the picture books, were half the length of the row house where I was raised. The crack in the Liberty Bell is nothing much. Here, the fence by the grassy knoll in person looks like any picket fence. Oswald, so they say, got away on an ordinary Midtown bus. Went through my mind like a wound, said Abraham Zapruder. The snow-white cloud of his brain scatter like a thought balloon. The booming kill shots sound. Things of different size leave equivalent wounds. Bug bites, bombs, or bullets. They all leave scars, and the scars are what the survivors call the truth. I'll read two more very, very quickly. These are not all about others. There are one or two lyrics in here. This is called Watching My Daughter Play in the Water. In the end, she will have to find the truth of whatever there is to know, even the fractal truths in play and pleasure. It's that or the undertow of doubt that grows, as we all do, into currents of desolation will sweep her up. Her nerve will fail, and her only consolation will be knowing that joy is partial and its parts are scattered all over, impartially like the hot light that kisses this cold water. And I will close with this. Photons and house dust. I've translated French, but my pronunciation is awful. But this begins with an epigraph from Mallarmé, La chair est triste, hélas, which is the first poem of his that I ever encountered. And here's how I encountered it. Dawn, strange house, a futon. A finger of sunlit dust struck the book you fell asleep on, and La chair est triste, hélas. 5 words, fingered by sunlight, you still half asleep. Then 6 more, indexed in smoking gold. You read on, et j'ai lu tous les livres. In random sunlight and house dust, you took it as prophecy. The spray of light that entered and stopped at a line of poetry, sent 93 million human miles in 9 minutes human time, tunneling through the vacuum and the squinting Venetian blinds and meeting the boiling house dust and coiling a gold path through and settling why. On this opening line, it started something in you. We all get a single wake-up call. You're either in or out. From then on, wondering about what you must be about. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Joe. What wondering, how did it go? Again, the last line?
Oh, how did the last, about what it's all about. Wondering about what it's all about. Sorry if you lost that.
Gotcha. Well, thank you everyone for this wonderful reading tonight, including Alex, Lynn, Martin, Petra, Dennis, and JT. And we're now going to move to the open mic section of the reading. So over to you, Cassandra.
Yay, the first open for 2024. And after such an incredible series of features, I have a good feeling about our first open. So we have to begin with John Wessex. It's not an open unless we begin with the strange and wonderful worlds and often surprising ones from John. So over to you, John.
Cassandra, may I share the screen?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, hang on. I forgot to make you co-host. I've like dropped my activities off after the holidays that you should be able to now.
Okay, let's see. Okay. Pew statistics say that in 2021, Between 100 Americans and 700 Americans died in mass shootings. The larger number, I believe, counts gangbangers killing themselves. The National Weather Service says that 300 Americans get struck by lightning every year. That's not deaths; those are just struck by lightning. Pew Statistics also says that of all the firearm deaths, only 3% are from rifles. In case you don't know, AR-15s are rifles. The CDC says that 36,000 Americans die per year from the flu. That bounces around a lot. You know, during the COVID lockdown, not very many people got the flu. And also the CDC says that in 2023, 54,000 Americans died from COVID still. Anyway, this little picture is why I think that the news reporting on guns is bogus. So now let me read you the poem. Invasion of the Gun Snatchers. Reporters splash blood on front pages, scatter shell casings in editorials, and feed the public ammunition to fire fusillades of outrage. Even though the chance of dying in a mass shooting is the same as getting struck by lightning, there are no headlines about the epidemic of lightning violence. Even though the flu kills 30 times more, only mass shootings make headlines because guns are opportune villains. Even though COVID kills as many in a week as mass shootings do in a year, gun snatchers target firearms while sacrificing N95 masks to the god of apathy. Even though Elijah Dickens saved dozens with his pistol, millions of defensive gun uses don't make headlines because heroism challenges the gun snatcher agenda. Even though arbitrary laws turn responsible gun owners into felons, politicians pile on more when yellow journalism misleads voters. Even though 1 in 3 Americans own firearms, the news muzzles our voices. I get it. The news is scary, but what about those robbed, beaten, or raped because they had no way to defend themselves? And who will protect us when the Proud Boys march in? Flak vests, teardrop glasses, their bodies buff with intimidation? The police who stood by while a gunman rampaged in Uvalde? Maybe the Boston cop who bragged about running over Black Lives Matter demonstrators? The deputies on the Oath Keepers mailing list? Bodyguards who kept Salman Rushdie and Paul Pelosi safe? How about the feds who fled Cliven Bundy's rifles? Black skin gets you gunned down on the pavement, a cowboy hat, a guest spot on Fox News. Who will protect us? The prosecutors who bungled the Mahler takeover trial, the ex-president who wanted troops to shoot protesters' legs, the CPAC attendees who bend their knees to Viktor Orban's great replacement theory, the House Speaker who wanted to turn America into a Trump dictatorship. Government won't protect us, but gun snatchers demand we surrender the means to defend ourselves. And I will post where I got my data from. If you don't believe me, you can check it out for yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That's sobering. Just when we all think we've got their head around John Westick world, you put in some feeding the public ammunition and some lightning violence. That was amazing. What a great way to start open. Wow, 2024 rocks in the open. Thank you. And if you can put up, if you could put a link as well to the story that you have published, that would be great. So people can read more of you. Next, we have Don. Don is always a wonderful reader in our open, so we're pleased to have him again this week. Don.
Thanks very much. It's a privilege to read in this company with the wonderful poetry that we had already. I wonder if I could also share the screen.
Yep. I just need to make you a co-host. That's the easiest way to do it. So I think you just have to agree to that, and then you should get the magic green button that can allow you to share the
Got
screen.
it. Where is it?
Should be down the bottom toolbar. Yeah, excellent. There we
In
go.
In the beginning, we in America wake to the horror, 1,200 dead, 200 abducted, Israel poised to destroy as God did to Sodom. We swear never forget, or free Palestine, or some other such meme of the moment. Babel, the towers at city center in flames, smoke and harbor stench billowing silver in the sun. So it goes on and on. We care as we watch on TV, but we live in an orchard. Figs and cedar, fresh bread and warm shade, clean work and time stretching to the evening cool. The innocents and righteous of Israel and Gaza may as well have died with Lot's nameless wife, killed by God for caring because he never did, even for his own. So why should we? We in America may as well have lived as imbeciles in Eden, where knowledge was forbidden, when hate and humanity were new.
Thank you so much. Another very topical and important piece. And I've always loved the way that you juxtapose images with your poetry. So it was wonderful to have another poem from you. Thank you so much. Next, we have the man in the chair. We have DeWitt himself, who is going to regale us with something wonderful, I believe. DeWitt.
Am I through?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. This is kind of a prose poem. It's called Beautiful Flower. Here is Evan Fraser, Amherst sophomore dreaming of a just society, son of an English professor at the University of Northern Florida. Came to Amherst on a merit scholarship. He wrote his high school English teacher that he sought with his life to express a brilliance that would stun the eye so the image would linger. 5 feet 6 inches, 140 pounds, white male, reads the town of Amherst police report. No evidence of drug use. Interviews with students, teachers, and neighbors determined that he was a normal young man, decent, earnest student, good sense of humor. He lived in an apartment off campus where residents saw him working hard, riding his motorcycle. He was survived by an older brother and sister. Mother died when he was 15, father baffled. The message, the letter left for friends, society, the world. I am Socrates, Jesus, Gandhi. Love one another. Long run first, perhaps. Wonder at this world, this envelope. The shower, scalding, then cold. Skin glows. Shaves. The layered cotton clothing in 80-degree heat. Save the wheels t-shirt. Heavy socks. The 5-gallon can, sloshing. The rehearsals and viewings of news clips over and over. Saturate grass first. Heave can overhead after clothes have been soaked. Sting in eyes, bitter on lips, fumes, cough, breathe deep. Quick, before anyone realizes or interferes. Intensity of purpose, graceful, efficiency of movement. like ablution. Flick the bick. Sears like hunger, rape, birth, bursting bones, like impotence before earthquake or tidal wave, like cancer at its worst, like killing cramps, migraine, jaw tightening. Pain is other, tangible, enemy and lover, engrossing, intimate, a corridor, a tunnel that I shoulder through, breathless and gasping, but then sheer vision, faith. Recorded lifetimes, stop time photos, sped up after 90 years so that faces morph like unfurling and withering flowers. The immolator, one of this study, needs to be slowed down in order to match the rhythm. His 19 years ending in the stop frame now of 2 minutes. Slow motioning his lighting of the bick, the flame like a bud, a flower unfurling, and then the bloom slowly wrapping him like a silken bright robe, or even garlands blooming, something fragile, fragrant and soft, his face dissolving as others melt at other speeds within the liquidity, the pouring, and the light. He stands before his 15th annual class in Shakespearean tragedy. Leben tot, he says to the 13 faces, bright young faces, college juniors, though sleepy and hungover this Tuesday. Dying for love. How do we understand this? Tristan and Isolde, Dido for Aeneas, Romeo for Juliet, Juliet for Romeo, Othello for Desdemona, Antony and Cleopatra, then a whole act later, Cleopatra with the asp sucking his mistress's sleep. What is this, Jonestown? You, Ms. Bright One, Ms. Mystery, you say, not Jonestown, just proof of eternal devotion. Most lovers die one day at a time, like alcoholics stay sober. The silver, the golden anniversary. There's our proof. Whatever they may think they mean to themselves, they mean what they do. The deed in living, like those Gisson statues that Leonard Baskin did on the Smith College campus. Let attention be paid, not kings and princes, memorialized for nobility on burial caskets, but a steel worker, a miner, beer-belly distended, naked, noble too in his self-sacrifice, his daily endurance, his lifetime's love. Or perhaps you sneer, his failure of imagination. I wait, you go on. One day at a time, like an alcoholic staying sober, down all the days, adding up, a marriage, a career, a life's meaning. For the tragic characters, that's all split up is all. Same passion, less time. An animal in its individual development passes through a series of constructed stages like those in the evolutionary development of the race to which it belongs, states Haeckel's biogenic law from 1868. Primordial soup, thickened slab, fire burn and cauldron bubble, lake, eternity rolled wide apart, wide asunder, rolling. Complex protein, protozoa, 4 billion years ago. Sperm, swarm, tail churn. Nature's Germans. The single penetration, egg ignites, DNA. Chromosomes, cells divide. Germinal to embryonic, 3 billion years. Future in the instant. Cambrian is gill arches. Placenta sea. My mother is a fish. Blake, the globe of blood trembled, branching out into roots, fibers writhing upon the winds. Now inner, near, and neck, cartilages of larynx. Tail emerges, disappears, zygote into embryo, Ordovikian. 4 million years ago, third moon, cartridge to bone, fourth moon, heart forms, fifth moon, ears, eyes, arms, and legs, embryo to fetus, Mesozoic, Jurassic, 200 million years ago, sixth the moon, early primates, skeleton visible, sex organs distinct, translucent skin, eyelashes, eyebrows, body movements, seventh moon, survival outside womb probable, Pleistocene, Homo erectus, Neanderthal, 100 years ago, Holocene, weight gains, increased activity in kidneys, heart, ninth moon, fetus to newborn, you, me. I ask you now, the miracle, this life, the person out of the person, body from body, flesh from flesh, crying we come forth, time itself, apocalypse, ignition, atom to atom, all existence in the flash. King Nebuchadnezzar cast Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the burning fiery furnace. But this was showmanship, the clincher, preserving flesh from fire. The hair of their heads was not singed, their mantles were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. Then there is purgatory, holy fires cleansing to essence. I lean forward over my clasped hands and stare into the fire, says Dante, thinking of human bodies I once saw burned and once more see them there. To imagine burning is not to burn.
Wow. That was huge. That was amazing. Love one another. Most lovers die just one day at a time. So many great things. The segue to Shakespeare was wonderful. It was kind of Chris Daven as well with its birth and one person from another. So thank you for that meat for me to digest today. Next, we have Karen, who is also, apart from her gorgeous bookshelves and resident hair cutter of Lit Balm regulars, is also an amazing poet who often reads something quite eco or something quite special. So Karen, are you there? Yes.
Sorry about the lighting. Someday we may get it fixed, but right now it's pretty dark. I think I've read this before, but I'm going to read it again. It's called Twin Oaks. Let the blue crayon have its wish to color the sky, then shape a cloud to become a kite that becomes a carpet flying back into the vestibule of the house you grew up in. Rush up the stairs and into your old room and greet the twin oaks outside your window like the long lost friends they are. See them wave, see them dance and let down their hair for you to braid into your heart. Hear them tell how they sometimes wept because they were not part of a forest or even a copse in the middle of a field of wildflowers. Scrape their sadness into a bowl of moss where mushrooms surprise morning with their unexpected presence. And when the sun dips from the other side of earth and rises where you are, step back into your life carrying with you those twin oaks and their forest dreams plaited into your heart.
So gorgeous. It's so visual, your beautiful blue crayon and your mushroom surprising morning. Thank you so much, Karen. We love you. We could see you really well. So despite the darkness, you were a beacon coming from your gorgeous room. We have our second John without a H, who's going to read for us next. John, what have you got for us?
Thank you. I have a poem called Anne Sexton's Death, 45 years ago today. I don't smoke, but would have at your behest. Truth hasn't the same domesticity mingling a throat. I have a doll theory that explains the orbiters to whom you were malleable. James Wright, Azel Mack, Mary Gray. What's confession but pull string? Outlook has downturns in Mississippi. My umbrella, sun guard, halo, Kelly Green. The photo of K.O. carving a pumpkin. Middlebrook's biography has you archived from holiday to halogen. His handsome, the kind that scoops seeds. My last meal wouldn't be a downtown proof read. Glue from your out of print books flakes my floor. The 74 jacket shot, dress plural floral. Your drink on brick, collarbone a doorstop of someone who treated suicide like saloon. No one writes of your shoes on October 4th. Was it farewell and barefoot? The tulip of betterment means one day my father broke down at the ironing board. We hugged bayonet to monsoon. My sickness, his steam. Don't know how to light a match. Am incapable of cigarette. I quit turpentining myself into corners. Maybe there's a suitor. I've out-delted disorder. Still, the engine took you from diamond to coal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always a joy to hear Anne Sexton's name brought back in any reading. Holiday to Halogen. My father broke down at the ironing board. Amazing, amazing images and a beautiful moment to have Anne Sexton recalled to us all. So we have our favorite duo to end out the open. We have badass Brooklyn Cindy, who has her badass poet t-shirt on, but it's buried below many layers to keep her warm, I believe, in her gorgeous lounge room. Cindy, we got it. We got a shot of it. Amazing.
Got it. I'm going to read a political prose poem from my chapbook, my last chapbook, Telling You Everything, which happens to be available on Amazon and on Press and Barnes and Noble. And Cassandra did the blurb.
I recommend it. I think everyone should get a copy.
It's worth buying the book just for the blurb. And the poem happens to have the word sock in it. Who knew? The world is a hot and sloppy place, a stew pot of muck and millstone. The weather betrays us as the sooty flue of government blows useless black smoke into our faces. We are a nation of scoundrels and sock puppets. In backyards across America, mangy dogs bury the stars and stripes, remnants of red, white, and blue under partisan gravestones. Here on the beach, we sharpen our shovels and continue digging to China. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. All that muck and millstone. We love it. Thank you, Cindy. What a rousing poem. And now it wouldn't be a lip balm if we did not end with Bob in his kitchen. And his first open for 2024. And Bob, I think you got up before and you may be wearing shorts, which is, a surprise to all of us because I think we only ever get to see you from the chest up. So very excited to see what you might be reading for us today.
Okay, I rarely read from this, but it's my series of poems about Dr. Cone, who was a medieval metaphysician and conjurer. and it's from Poets Wear Prada. And I'm just going to read the first one. And I get their prose poems straddling the line a little to flash fiction, some of them, but Cone travels. Dr. Cone is tied into a metal frame and lowered over the edge of the map. Rapidly, he leaves a world of concepts behind, plunging instead into a land of forces and junctures. They do not see him at all in this new land. He is felt the way a dream is felt, gone before they can even be sure what he was. The journey remains incomprehensible to him, memorable at points only because of the state his mind was in when he reached them. The details are not there at all, almost as if he had read about it in a book, and perhaps he had. The map and arrows seem to lead him only in circles, back ever again to the edge where the rivers start, cut irrevocably like the slice of the knife that sends the lucky ones back again and again from the altar to sit with the gods.
Wow, the slice of the knife. My goodness, that was a great one, Bob. Thank you so much for ending on that way. And so, Mark, I think it's back to you. I'm not sure whether this was the political reading or the sock reading, but it was one of them, maybe both.
Political socks for sure, and political shocks. Anyway, thank you so much, Joe Barbarese, Alex Cigale, Lynn Levin, Martin Ott, Petra Kuppers, and Dennis Maloney for this wonderful reading. Our next reading for Lit Balm is on January 20, which features Kim Lyons, Vit Bakaitis, Billy Chernikov, Laura Price, and Sean Cole. And to close this up, I'm going to read a poem that I wrote called Into the Unseen. And it goes deeper than you could imagine, deeper still than that very last layer, for there is no full stop. The butcher bird scries these parches since the day reflects in the water. She knows each cell is linked to one another, deep to their eternal end. And the circle is the metaphor of choice, all those circles of infinity bound together in a single forever of voles and beetles and crickets and parasites. Good night, everybody. Thank you for a wonderful lip balm. I wish you a beautiful weekend, and we shall see you on January 20 at the latest. Love you guys. Love and poetry.
Love and poetry and socks, everyone. See ya.